Ambassador Rao, President Biden is moving into the chair, moving into the White House. What's your sense of where his priorities will lie? Because the general sense one gets is that he's going to be preoccupied with domestic issues.
Thank you, Surya, for having me on the show. First and foremost, I think we should comment briefly on the state of the India-US bilateral relationship. And essentially speaking, the relationship is in a good place. And despite the changes in administration or, the fact that we had a Republican president with Mr. Trump and a Democratic president with Mr. Obama before that, but essentially the relationship has been on a forward trajectory. And there have been many accomplishments to show for the relationship. So in that sense, the policymakers in India should not lose sleep over the fact that there is going to be a change in administration, and Mr. Biden could bring a fresh set of priorities to this relationship. I don't believe he will. Essentially, there is a metabolism about this relationship that is very stable and very positive, and that embraces, as the outgoing US ambassador said, every field of human endeavor, essentially. When it comes to the priorities that Mr. Biden is likely to have, you have to understand that the United States today and what you've seen in the wake of the election results and the drama and the very tragic drama and unfolding of events in the US Capitol on the 6th of January, all this goes to show that America is a deeply polarized society today. There are deep, deep divisions and chasms within the country. And any incoming president, leave alone Mr. Biden, has a lot on his plate. He will have to focus on the domestic agenda, the domestic priorities, and the crisis that stares him in the face, front and center, is the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
The number of deaths that have been so high within the United States. So unusual and so, different from what one would assume for a developed country like the United States, a world leader in so many fields. So he will have to focus on that, the vaccine rollout, bringing down the death toll, just healing the country in so many ways, looking at the unemployment figures, looking at the way people have suffered, have hurt essentially in these times. And also, fact that Mr. Trump was there to begin with was symptomatic of the problems within American society. Something has gone wrong there, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be sorted out. And Mr. Biden has his job cut out for him in that sense.
Yeah. Ambassador, do you feel that President Trump has kind of hemmed in Biden with the initiatives he has taken over the last few months in foreign policy?
Well, Mr. Trump's style is essentially to foreclose everything where his rivals or competitors are concerned. For instance, you saw the fact that the Indo-Pacific strategy of the government, the Trump administration, was declassified recently, and which is highly unusual just for a two-year-old document to have been declassified in that fashion. So yes, I mean the measures he's announced vis-a-vis China, the talk of what the U.S. should do vis-a-vis Taiwan. The Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo, has not relented as far as his travels are concerned in order to make pronouncements about Trump policy here, there, and everywhere. So yes, in that sense, I think he has tried to constrict the space available for Mr. Biden. But on the other hand, I think large portions of the planet, of the world, whether it's in Europe or in Asia, have essentially felt a kind of lifting, as it were, of a certain atmosphere, of a certain, sense of skepticism about America's role in the world. I think that was beginning to show everywhere where the Trump administration was concerned. I think that in that sense, the world is probably looking forward to a more sober, to a more balanced world view as far as the Biden administration is concerned.
No, there is a concern, that perhaps on issues like Kashmir, on human rights, there could be a certain stepping up of the pressure on India because we appear to have got away with it for some time. What is your sense of this?
Well, the Biden administration or the people in the Biden administration, Mr. Biden himself, they see themselves, they like to project themselves as champions of human rights and of the best democratic values. But after what you saw happen in the United States in the last few days, I think they have to set their own house in order. And they don't have a clear conscience anymore on that. And as Richard Haas, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, said recently, somehow America seems to have, there's been a retreat because of all these events of America from that front ranking position as a leader for democracy everywhere. So in a sense, I think there will be a tendency to tone down the commentary on what is happening in the outside world. It's not that they will not speak out on these issues. Their ambassador in Uganda recently had a tweet which said, even if things are bad in our country, it doesn't mean we should stop talking about importance of democracy and the need to uphold basic democratic values in the rest of the world. So you will see that kind of a slightly contradictory position being taken when you compare it with what is happening within their own country, whether it's respect for minorities, whether it's the rights of people trying to cross the border from Mexico, the way Mr. Trump treated all of them. So, yes, I think, there has been a past record when it comes to people within the Biden administration, even Ms. Kamala Harris herself, about issues like Kashmir. But I think the overarching importance and the strategic value of the relationship with India will take a paramount position when it comes to how the Biden administration tackles these subjects, as it were. So I don't believe these will become obstacles as far as the transaction and as far as the conduct of the relationship is concerned. If at all concerns are expressed, and they may very well be, it will be, away from the public space, away from the public arena. They will refrain from making public pronouncements on these issues. They will perhaps talk about it behind closed doors. And I think between democracies such as ours, that kind of a free and fair and frank exchange of views really doesn't take away from the strength or the health of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. The Indo-Pacific strategy, which is actually the document of the previous administration, details of which have just come out. What is your view of that? Because it says a lot of things, talks a lot about American leadership, and in a sense tends to devalue the role of, say, countries like India.
Not really. My impression from, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but what I have read of the document, whatever is in the public space, is that the importance, the diplomatic, the economic, the political importance of the relationship with India is actually highlighted in the document. Vis-a-vis, of course, the need to control and to check and to compete and to confront China, on the other hand. So India is one of the countries which has received, I think, a lot of attention and whose importance for the region and whose importance for the United States has, in fact, been highlighted in the document. So I wouldn't say that it causes issues for the future of the India relationship. And maybe, of course, Mr. Biden doesn't need to follow this document, letter for letter. But I think I was listening to Mr. Kurt Campbell, who's become the czar, Asian czar for Biden, in a sense, the czar for dealing with relations with Asian countries. He has also emphasized the importance of India and the importance of understanding India more deeply in the United States, and to take the relationship forward. And as far as the relationship with China is concerned, yes, you may have perhaps a more sober and a more reasoned approach to China. I don't visualize President Biden or Secretary of State designate Blinken referring to China as just the CCP, as Mr. Pompeo did. It may be less ideological, but I think the competition and the fact that, the rise of China is casting long shadows on the prospects for America in this region, I think will consume this new administration just as much as it did the Trump administration.
Last question, Ambassador. Mr. Kenneth Juster, the outgoing US ambassador, in his farewell address has referred to a lot of things, including the fact that a trade deal has not been concluded. India is getting too deeply protectionist. What's your view of where the Biden administration could go on these issues?
Well, it could very well be that similar concerns are raised even by the Biden administration. But I don't believe this is going to happen immediately. As we discussed before, I think the primary focus for Mr. Biden and his team will be looking at the domestic situation within the United States. And there's this healing process that is needed. There's a lot of problem solution that is required within the country itself. So I think, take, for instance, that democracy summit that he had promised to convene, a few weeks ago. I think after what has happened in the Capitol, a lot of analysts are saying perhaps now the US should go slow, take the foot off the pedal as far as the democracy summit is concerned and really tend to the problems that need fixing at home. So in that sense, they may not be kind of turning the water hose on India immediately. I think it's going to take a few months. But yes, we should be prepared for, concerns being articulated as far as, members of Congress are concerned, within the legislature, and also within the executive on these issues, because trade between India and the United States is a very important component of the relationship. Investment is a very important component of the relationship. And we don't have a trade agreement with the United States. Even that limited, document that we wanted to see agreed upon, that we were not able to get that either. So there's a lot of unfinished tasks also on the agenda left over from the Trump years that the Biden administration inherits and will have to focus on. After all, America is our largest trading partner today. And America is, I believe, the largest foreign investor also. And look at the number of American companies that do business here. Look at our defense cooperation and the fact that we want to set up our own defense production capacities within this country with the help of the United States. So issues of the business environment within the country, issues of investment from abroad within the country, just the regulatory environment, that applies across the board where any country in the world is concerned. America, is going to perhaps spearhead some concerns vis-a-vis us because of the depth and the breadth of the relationship that we have with the United States.
On that note, Ambassador Rao, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Surya. Pleasure talking to you too. Also.
Thank you, madam.
Bye-bye.